All right, Alyssa, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time. Looks like you're back home in Nashville after a run of shows in New York. So if you wouldn't mind kind of just taking us through what the last few weeks were like for you here in New York.
Yeah, I am back in Nashville. I'm in my studio, as you can see. But I was up in New York for almost 3 weeks, about two and a half. And we had a ton of shows. We got to open for Marshall Tucker. We got to play a ton of really, really fun venues. We played bands at Barnard, and we got to do some headlining shows. We did a headlining show out in Perry at the Charcoal Corral, which was incredible. They said it was the biggest crowd they had seen there. And it was just so much fun. We did tons of band shows. We did one acoustic show where I also did a workshop on songwriting for kids, which was so fun. I love just, talking about music with young people that want to do it as a career. And it's just so rewarding to do that. But it was amazing. It was like every day, it was like wake up, eat a good breakfast, go get ready for sound check, do the show, come home, go to sleep, repeat it the next day. So it was so much fun. I'm definitely still recovering. I'm pretty tired, but it was so fun. It was great.
Well, that's cool. So you're back home now, and what's in store for you for the next couple of weeks? What do you got going on down in Nashville? Aside from just catching up on some sleep and some work, what else?
Yeah, sleeping is a good thing. Honestly, when I'm here in Nashville, the biggest things I'm focusing on are writing, recording, and meeting with people and just doing the Nashville thing. Every day looks different, but I've got tons of writing sessions coming up. I've got tons of recording sessions coming up because I produce a lot of artists now, and I am just keeping busy. I do have some Nashville gigs as well. We're actually playing a full band show at Loretta Lynn's Ranch over Labor Day weekend, which is going to be super fun. And yeah, just busy, busy as always. But that's how I like it.
That's great. Yeah, as you know, I am located in Rochester, New York, place that you're pretty familiar with. So, can you talk a little bit about your upbringing and kind of, what inspired you to get into music? Did you think it would always be country, and kind of talk a little bit about that stuff?
Yeah, so I grew up in East Rochester, New York, and I was always kind of drawn to music even as a baby. I mean, there's, home videos of me as a little tiny baby, like dancing to music and like dancing on a piano and things like that. I was always in dance and chorus and band and school and stuff. And I just always loved music so much. And one thing that I always did that nobody taught me to do, I just did it, was I wrote my own songs when I was a kid. And I didn't know I was writing songs. I was just writing, little words in a journal, coming up with little melodies in my head. And I kind of thought all kids did that until I found out that not all kids do that. And I was kind of like the weird one. And then I found out it was songwriting. I was writing songs. And so I had asked my dad to teach me how to play guitar so I could put music to the lyrics I was coming up with. And I had played a little piano. I'd come up with like piano music all the time. And when he taught me guitar, it kind of snowballed everything from there. I just started writing like crazy. There was one summer where I wrote a song every single night. And I'd come downstairs and be like, all right, here's the song I wrote tonight. And I loved it so much. I practiced until my fingers bled. And again, it all just snowballed from there. I started playing original music out at local venues, and that started in kind of an acoustic setting, just me. And then I asked my dad to play with me at gigs, and he always says I brought him out of retirement because he was in a band before I was born. So I was like, hey, come back and like play some shows. And then that led to a full band thing. And I never really tried to write country music. I just wrote what I wanted to write, what felt good, what felt right. And I didn't really know like where I fit until I heard country music on the radio. And specifically, I heard, the Dixie Chicks. I heard Taylor Swift. I heard Shania Twain. I heard Dolly Parton. I heard Trisha Yearwood, Faith Hill, all these incredible queens of country, in my opinion. And they just kind of told me where I belonged. And it just kind of made sense in my head. So then I remember watching these TV programs about all these artists, all these country singer songwriters, and they were talking about how they got their start. And every single one mentioned this magical place called Nashville. And I knew I wanted to be a musician just for the rest of my life. That's all I wanted to do. I could never picture myself doing anything else. And so when I kept hearing about this place called Nashville, I was like, okay, I got to get there. So I asked my parents one summer, I was like, hey, for our vacation this year, what would you think about going to Nashville? And they said yes. So we ended up going to Nashville, and I did some open mics when I was there. Here, I'm in Nashville now. But we did like the Bluebird Cafe open mic, Commodore Grill, and we just explored the city, and I loved it so much. And I just had this like overwhelming feeling of, you need to be here. You need to move here. This is where you belong. This is it. And so we got back home. I was starting to record original music in studios in the area, recording my own original music in my own bedroom. I taught myself how to produce stuff at a really young age. And it kept going. And then eventually I convinced my dad to bring me back to Nashville on business trips where I would try to meet people and write with people and just try to get like a tiny little bit in the door somewhere. And we did that for probably 2 years, just taking trips every couple months. And I must have heard probably 1,000 times, when are you moving to Nashville? You need to move to Nashville. You have to be here. You have to be here. Like there's no way around it. You have to be here. And so I was like, okay, I need to be here. I need to make it happen. And finally in 2016, I did, moved here in January, and it's been a very wild ride. It's been not at all what I expected, but I don't regret it one bit. I love it so much here. It is just, it's the only place I've been that I don't feel like the weird one. You know what I mean? Because it's like everybody here gets it. Everybody here is a singer-songwriter, and it's such a sense of community, and I love it. And I feel like I've kind of found this just happy place of getting to live in Nashville, but still visiting Rochester and playing shows for the incredible people that support me there. And it's crazy. And I say all the time that I feel like music chose me. I didn't really like, write down on paper, like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what it's going to look like. Like music was always in my blood. It was always just what I wanted to do, and it's all I ever want to do the rest of my life.
Yeah, so look what being the weird one got you. You know, now you're doing what you love, and you get to do it every day, and one of the most inspirational places to do it, surrounded by people who are just amazing at what they do every day. So since you've been down there, um, talk about what it's done for your career, and like you mentioned being able to play the Bluebird, iconic music venue. I saw you also were a part of the song suffragettes that they do I believe at the listening room. So talk a little bit about some of those opportunities that have kind of come up since you've made the move.
Yeah, I've honestly gotten to cross a lot off my bucket list. Like you said, Bluebird Cafe, I've gotten to play several shows there now, and it's so special every single time. Song suffragettes, a listening room, so fun. I've gotten to write with a lot of people that actually wrote my favorite songs. I've gotten to meet so many artists. I've gotten to just find this most incredible community here of like-minded people. And honestly, I think the biggest thing is moving to Nashville forces you to grow. It forces you to be the absolute best musician you can be. It pushes you. It's such a beautiful thing because it kind of like tells you who you're supposed to be. I feel like we all move here thinking we're one thing and we're going to do this one path and we're so set on it. And then you get to Nashville and it just kind of shows you where you're supposed to be. And it's such a magical place. It's like Disney World to me, honestly. I feel like a kid living in Disney World. But yeah, I've grown so much as a vocalist, as a songwriter, as a producer, as a performer, just all of the things. I look back on, before I had even taken a trip here, and it's like night and day. It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, it's crazy to hear you mention just all of the different things that you do. Obviously singer songwriter, but I know you play multiple instruments. You mentioned producing, so talk a little bit about the different instruments that you play, and how you've evolved, I guess, as a producer.
Yeah. So I think I play 12 instruments. I kind of lost count if we're being honest. I play guitar, mandolin, ukulele. I'm like looking around my studio to find a piano. A little bit of bass. I play silver flute, Irish flute, piccolo, penny whistle. I played alto saxophone in high school. I play a little harmonica. Um, let's see, is that it? I do slide guitar, like dobro and stuff like that. I think that's everything. Did I say mandolin? I think that's everything. Honestly, the majority of instruments that I know, I learned because I was working on a track of a new song and I wanted, for example, mandolin. I really wanted mandolin on a track, but I didn't know anybody in upstate New York that played mandolin. So I, couldn't reach out to somebody in Nashville and be like, hey, play on my track. I was like 16. And so, we just picked up a really cheap mandolin at the music store and I taught myself how to play it and I put it on the track. I was producing myself in my bedroom. So that's how I've learned a lot of my instruments. I learned a lot by ear. My dad taught me how to play guitar and he taught me a few chords and then I kind of just like kept going. But when it comes to producing, that is something that I never saw being a big part of my story. And it has ended up being a huge part of my story. So basically, I started recording my own original music in studios around upstate New York. And I had some really good experiences, but I had some not good experiences. And this one experience in particular, the producer just didn't get my vision. And I felt like they weren't taking me seriously. I was literally a 16-year-old girl. So I think they were like, what does she know? And I was just getting frustrated with the process. And I'm somebody that is pretty sassy and independent at times, most times. And I just remember I was so frustrated with the process. I asked my dad, because he was at every session with me. I was like, it doesn't look that hard. I feel like I can do it. Can we go get the program, the recording program, and can I try it out? So we did. We went and got the recording program. I spent, I don't even know how many hours on YouTube tutorials that are like how to produce, how to do this, how to do that, how to do this. And fast forward, I ended up finishing that project. I produced 6 songs totally on my own. And I had a lot of people in the industry tell me that they were just as strong as the tracks that we recorded at that studio. So I was like, okay, maybe I need to keep doing this. So even when I came down here to Nashville and recorded a bunch of original stuff at studios, I always did a lot on my own. I always like comped my own vocals. I always played a lot of the instruments myself and picked out which takes I like and all those things. And so I also ended up going to college for music recording. And I was one of the only girls in my class, but I went to Finger Lakes Community College and got my degree. And it was really cool to like get that experience and kind of further what I learned on YouTube. And then when I got down here to Nashville, my plan was always to be able to do my own demos because demos are so important when you're trying to be a songwriter and artist. You need demos to pitch to people, right? To send to people because no one wants to listen to something that, you recorded on a cell phone. So I was doing these simple demos. And then eventually, when I got a publishing deal, my publisher was like, hey, this is great. Keep doing the demos. We love this. Those demos turned into full recordings. I had friends that were like, hey, you should like do this professionally. You should produce people. And I kind of like shook it off. I was like, no, I don't think that's what I want to do. I just want to write and be an artist. And so then the biggest shift happened for me when I was working on an album. I was promising my fans I was going to do an album versus singles and EPs that I had been doing. And I was planning it all out. And then the pandemic happened. And I was sitting right here in this chair when I realized I had to cancel the studio time I was booking. I had to tell the musicians that I couldn't do it. Everything was shut down. And so I had this moment that was like, okay, either I don't do the album or I do it myself. And I was kind of scared, I think, to just do it myself at that point. I didn't trust myself enough. But the pandemic kind of forced me to take that leap. So I ended up producing the entire 13-song album totally by myself that whole summer, locked myself in this room and just got to work producing it. And I just couldn't believe that I did it on my own. And then that album debuted in the top 10. And I got so many people reaching out about my production on that, saying like, who produced it? Who did you work with? And every time I told them, oh, I did it myself, I got the same reaction every time, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You're a girl and you're doing that. That's so rare. So after that, especially, it really picked up speed on the production side. And now I'm producing several artists full time. And I have a full time job basically doing tracks for other artists in addition to my own stuff. And it's crazy. I never intended for it to be such a big thing, but I love it so much. And it has ended up being just a giant blessing, I guess you could say, that I have found this space. Like I said, Nashville kind of shows you who to be, and I've just, embraced all this production stuff that's coming in, and I love it. And it's one of those things that, people in the industry hear producer and they think it's going to be a guy. And then I walk in the room and they're like, "Oh, you're the producer. Oh, okay." And it's fun. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know you mentioned, with some of your influences, you mentioned, Shania Twain and the Dixie Chicks and a lot of pretty badass women. And like I feel like right now is such a great time to be a woman in country music because there are so many talented women that are coming and blowing up. Whether it's social media, whether it's touring on the radio, on satellite radio, whatever. So uh, just the time for women in country music seems like it's awesome right now. So good for you. Can you talk a little bit about kind of what some of those experiences were? You mentioned being in the studio as a 16-year-old girl and kind of not being taken seriously. Are things different now that we've seen this kind of this emergence with all of these pretty kick-ass women in country?
It's definitely changing. I will say that. I mean, I've had quite a few instances where there was definitely some sexism present. There was one time in particular where I was being pitched to a major record label, and it was a very exciting time for me because it was one of the first times that, my name got into a pot of somewhere giant, that I was like, oh, this could be it. And we heard back and they said, we are not looking to sign a female. We already have one, but she's very pretty. And I was like, okay, ouch. And I think I was 21 at the time. And it was just, it stung. I was like, wow, did you even listen to my music, or you just looked at my picture and said no? That's okay. Um, on the production side, I've had quite a few people not take me seriously because I'm a girl, and they think, oh, she does, acoustic demos or little things. And then I do a full track and they're like, oh, I didn't realize you did that. I've had quite a few meetings where people say, oh, it's just so hard to be a girl in country music. It's just so hard. I mean, I've heard those words, it's just so hard, so many times that I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, I'm doing it. I'm not leaving. I'm not stopping. I've had people in the industry tell me, oh, you should be more like so and so, which doesn't make sense because there's already a so and so and they're killing it. I don't want to be them. They have their own thing. But there are definitely a lot of champions coming out for women, which I think is incredible. There are so many incredible rounds, like the Song Suffragettes. There are some people that are getting in at labels and radio and management companies and all these things that they want to bring more women. They want to bring more diversity in general, which I think is so important. And it's changing. It's just a slow change. It's kind of like the pace of a snail, I guess you could say. And sometimes it feels like we take one step forward and then two steps back, and it's kind of, it's not a straight line, I guess, but it is definitely getting better, just very slowly.
It's funny because I get turned on to some of these artists and in even songwriters where I'm like, okay, I have to find out more about this person. I have to go look up more of these songs that they've written, or take a look at their history. And I'm like, holy smokes, these there are some really talented women right now. So I think it's a great time for women in country. So that's really cool. But let's talk about your latest project, your latest EP, Country Found Me. Can you talk a little bit about you know the tracks that you had? Obviously, I'm assuming that you produced it on your own. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so I did produce it on my own. It's got 4 songs on it, 4 brand new songs, and it's called Country Found Me, like you said, which is the title track. And it's a project that I really wanted like a good variety of songs, even though it's a small project, I guess you could say, but it's got some up tempos, it's got some mid tempos, it's got some ballads, and I think it's a well rounded project, I hope. But I really wanted to make sure this project too was really authentic to me. That's a huge thing. And everything I do is just being authentic and not, trying to follow a trend or whatever. But the whole title track, Country Found Me, the whole EP was based on that song. And that song is literally my story in a song. Everything in that song is true about me, about how I got to where I am, my relationship with country music. And it's a song that I literally wanted to write for a while because I get the question so many times, what the heck is a girl from Rochester, New York doing in country music? Why is a girl from Rochester living in Nashville? It's just not a common thing, I guess you could say. And I got asked that so many times that I was like, man, I wish I could just like, bust out my guitar and play a song as my answer. And that's literally what this song is. I walked into a writing session with some friends of mine and I was like, hey, I got this idea. I want to write it. And it was really fun to just dive into my story and put it into a song. But I produced it entirely on my own. I'm a writer on every single song. I play 99% of the instruments on the whole project. The only other musician that is on the project is actually my dad, and he did a couple guitar solos for me. I always like including him when I can, especially on the song Country Found Me. I mention him in the song. So I was like, well, you have to be in the song. Like that, you have to be. But yeah, I'm really proud of the EP and I hope people like it. And there's a lot more where that came from too. There's always a lot more coming.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. I love just personally, I love Should Have Been You. Obviously, I love Country Found
Thank
Me. That's
you.
those are some of my favorites off the latest project. But yeah, so you're back in Nashville now, but you're coming back to upstate New York in a few short weeks, kicking off the Finger Lakes Country Music Festival. You're actually headlining the first night. So what can you tell us about that? Are you excited? Like, what can we expect?
Yes, we are so excited. It's going to be full band headlining show, and we've got Robert Tabor opening the show for us, and it is just going to be a blast. We're so excited. We're bringing out all the sparkles, all the fun songs. I'm going to wear my good boots. Like, it's going to be a fun time, and it's just going to be a party. So I hope people come on out. It's going to be so fun. I was so honored when they asked me to headline a date, and it's just going to be fun. We're so excited.
And that date is September 22nd, right?
Yes.
Cool. Well, if you haven't seen Alyssa perform, I had a chance to check her out actually last week when she was back here in Fairport, and tons of energy, just a great show. She had the full band. It was a lot of fun, a lot of dancing, a lot of jumping. Just really
Lots of hair
just
flip.
lots of hair flips. It's very entertaining, but definitely try to check her out. And before we wrap up here, why don't you plug some of your social media and tell people where they can find you and stream your music?
Yes. So probably the best place for everything is my website, which is just alyssatrahan.com. My music is on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google Play, all those things. And then social media wise, I'm on pretty much everything. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everything. So come say hi. I love to connect with people. I always post about my cats and new music and behind the scenes stuff. And I just love connecting with people. So come say hi.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in a few weeks at the Finger Lakes Country Music Festival. But we really appreciate it and looking forward to hearing some more of your work.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on.